And yeah, like Barrett said, I did give him a little warning that I tend to sometimes go over on my meeting times, but hey, I've done a good job by posting a clock up in my top left hand corner of my screen, so I can keep up with time and all. And I actually deleted a few slides from the PowerPoint presentation, so I wouldn't have to bore you guys as much, right? So yep, we're gonna walk through about 10 to 15 slides, and then we'll jump to a demo after that. But you guys feel free to ask questions, along the way if you have any questions. But yeah, thanks for joining today, and I hope everyone has had a great Microsoft week so far. For those that don't know me, Barrett just introduced me. My name is Justin Brown, and I work in our OIT EDAS collaboration reporting team. I tend to wear a few different hats in my role, like I assume most of us do. But I spend majority of my time supporting O365, mainly Teams and Power BI specifically. And yeah, so today I'm going to spend a little time covering one of the major 5 components of the Microsoft Power Platform, which is Power BI. And I will say it's nearly almost impossible to touch on all of Power BI in an hour session. Microsoft, and I'll talk about this then, but actually offers a dashboard in a day session that's a full-blown 8-hour course that's free, by the way, that you can sign up for. But just to give you an idea, right, that gives you it's the dashboard in a day, so they fit everything within 8 hours. So I'm cramming essentially all that into an hour and even less, right? So there's a few things I'll touch on, a few things I may not dive into as much. But again, if you have questions, want me to go in more in depth, then feel free to ask. But yeah, my main so I don't think you'll necessarily be a Power BI whiz, by the end of this session, but my goal is just to provide everyone with a clear understanding and, as well as equip you with the tools and resources to begin your Power BI journey. Okay. Let's do this. So I'm actually going to swap my camera off. I'm sharing screens on the VPN and also going to be firing up Power BI desktop here soon. So for latency purposes, let's keep it that way. But yeah. So before we talk about Power BI, I wanted to briefly cover, the Microsoft Power Platform for those that may not be familiar with it. The Power Platform it's a really powerful set of low-code applications, as Microsoft likes to coin that term of low-code, that allows you to analyze data, build solutions, automate processes, and even create, virtual chatbot agents. The idea of the Power Platform came from this vision of recognizing that organizations like UA have increasing flow of data everywhere, right? Clay even touched on that if you're able to join the Fabric presentation earlier. Clay mentioned how we have just multiple different data sources, across the university, and different tools we like to use to report on that data. The belief is that organizations can harness all data and gain insights to drive those business processes in the Power Platform. So it's kind of your all-in-one fit. But so as you can see, Power BI is just one of the major 5. It's a business analytics tool. Power Apps is an application development tool for basically low to no code apps. You can essentially build an app with a few clicks without really having to know any back end knowledge of coding and coding language. Power Pages provides users the ability to build quick, again, low code websites, all from the UI. And Power Automate, which is formerly known as Flow, enables process automation, which you basically create automated workloads and automate those, and can fire those based off certain triggers and whatnot. And then we've got Power Virtual Agents, which are virtual bots. Think of them as chat bots, right? That you can create and customize to your need. So yeah, I just wanted to touch a little bit on the Power Platform in case nobody really had that background knowledge that Power BI is just one of those major 5 components, that really make up the whole overall Microsoft Power Platform. All righty. So what is Power BI, right? Power BI has come a long ways. It was actually first introduced as a set of Excel add-ins. Everybody knows about the good old Excel add-ins in 2013. Fast forward, 11 years, and today, it's a powerful cloud-based platform that provides users with a wide range of tools and features to create things like data models, perform data analysis, and share, those different insights with others across organization. So that ultimately means it can be used in a variety of environments, from personal reports and visualization tools to, like, you can even use it as analytics and decisions behind either, like, it may be a small team project, or it could be an overall department initiative. But Power BI can handle any of those scenarios. So I do want to touch on, this is sort of new to the Power BI world. I guess if you keep up with the Microsoft lingo, not as much. But yeah, Power BI is now a component of Microsoft Fabric. So those that aren't familiar with Fabric's basically an all-in-one data analytics solution. We'll say, yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's an all-in-one data analytics solution that, it integrates across different workloads. Power BI being one of those. And essentially, it basically will allow everything to be under one unified environment, is the best way to put that. And my supervisor, Clay Davis, who's on this call, he did a presentation on Fabric that I mentioned earlier, at 1. So if you weren't able to join, I do recommend going back and watching that recording. It was very, very good and informal. But yeah, to sum it up, Power BI is a reporting tool that allows users to analyze data, right, while presenting it in a visual and meaningful way. It lets you tell a story about your data instead of just handing someone, just some raw data that really doesn't give any insights or tell any stories. And by connecting and visualizing your data this way, those individuals can get that quick or really in-depth overview of data, right? And crucially, you don't have to be a data scientist or programmer to use Power BI, because it goes back to, it's one of Microsoft's one of 5 Power Platform components, and it's also a low-code component. So, and that's really why the majority of us are here, right? Most of us probably aren't data scientists, and some may be programmers, but you might have a few languages under your belt, and you don't, quote unquote, have time to learn another, right? And yeah, that's the beauty of Power BI, is there's not really much of a learning curve when it comes to programming languages, unless you start diving into DAX and whatnot, which we'll talk a little bit about here soon. So yeah, just to kind of help you understand of kind of how all the elements work together. Power BI consists of 3 basic elements, which is the Windows desktop application, which is referred to as Power BI Desktop. Power BI Desktop is used to create your reports and visualizations. By the way, I will add, you may hear me say visuals throughout this, or visualizations, when I'm even doing the demo. They're the same thing, right? Visual is just a shorter and easier way to put it. But I wanted to make sure I use the word visualizations when I'm talking to you guys at the beginning, just so you have like kind of a grasp of what I'm referring to. But you'll hear me say visuals throughout. Just didn't want you to get them cross-referenced. But yeah, so yeah, it's used for creating reports, data visualizations. Then it offers a nice drag and drop interface, that low-code interface, that's making it easy to build those complex data models and visualizations that sometimes, frankly, take days and weeks on end to just get that visualization built out on some reporting platform. And then along with that, you're then, that's just step 1, right? So yeah. So then the second part, so that was Power BI Desktop. The second part would be Power BI Service. So Power BI Service is an online cloud-based service. It allows users to share and collaborate on reports and dashboards. And it's basically your platform for publishing, distributing the reports across an organization. And we'll talk kind of a little bit about the flow of that in a second. But basically, you started the Power BI Desktop, and then it goes to the Power BI Service. And then you've also got Power BI mobile apps that can be accessed from Windows, iOS, and Android devices. And this enables users to access and interact with their reports, on the go, right? And they can actually view these reports offline if they don't have a data connectivity, other things like that. So that's really one beneficial thing about regarding Power BI Mobile. And additionally, I do want to mention, and it's actually not in this pretty blurry, I realize that as I'm sharing my image as I'm sharing my screen, but hopefully you guys can at least see those titles above that. But yeah, Power BI Gateway is something I wanted to touch on too. But the gateway, and again, Clay had mentioned that and talked a little bit more in depth on it in the preview in the 1 o'clock Fabric presentation. So if you want to reference back to that just to hear a little bit more about the gateway and what we do internally in OIT, I would encourage that. But yeah, it essentially acts as a bridge between the Power BI service, right? Once the report's done and it lives in the service in the cloud, and your on-prem data sources. So it allows users to securely connect and refresh data sources in Power BI and reports and dashboards without having to move the data to the cloud, right? Which is awesome. We want to keep everything on-prem. We want to connect to our data. We want that connection to be live and real time. And so that's what those gateway servers serve for. In OIT, we have 3 gateway servers to manage the gateway services. And like I said, Clay actually dove in a little bit more of those on the previous session if you want to take a deeper look. But yeah, to kind of keep it at a high level, yeah, the gateway server is set up to essentially be that communication between that on-prem data and your report in the cloud. So we set up connections within that server or within that gateway service that allow users to connect to their data. I won't really dive into connections today, but just to kind of touch on that for a second, I wasn't really planning on doing this, but yeah, so we go in as admins and we actually create new connections. We provide it with those server paths and database names and account credentials, and then that connection is saved, and then we share that connection with you as an individual as a Power BI developer. So then when you go into Power BI on your side of through your UA account, and you open Power BI and you want to create a report, you actually can see that connection there once we've granted you access to it. Or vice versa, you already have a report that's using that data source. We create that connection, you go remap that, and then voila, your data's live in real time. So the gateway is a not necessarily a major piece of these 3, but it's a big deal, right? Because it allows us to keep our data, in real time and up to date. But yeah, I won't spend too much time on this, but yeah, these 4 elements, are designed to let you create, share, and consume business insights that in the way that best serves you and your role, right? So, generally the flow starts at the Power BI desktop, like I mentioned, where a report is created. This report can be published to the Power BI service and then finally shared, so that users can access it. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the common uses of Power BI. So the use of Power BI could depend on the role that you're in, like I said in the last slide. For an example, if you're a stakeholder in a project, then you might just want to use the Power BI service and the mobile app to take a glance, at the project, to see how it's performing, see how things are going, et cetera, et cetera. But on the other hand, if you're on the other side of the house and you're a developer, you'd be using Power BI desktop extensively to publish those Power BI desktop reports to the Power BI service. So it kind of really depends on what hat, I talked about at the beginning, you wear. Hey, you may wear both of those hats, right? But yeah, it all starts at the desktop and then ultimately turns into or goes into the service. A common, yeah, so I kind of mentioned this in the last slide, but yeah, a common flow of activity in Power BI. So to kind of break it out a little bit more, is you bring the data, in, right, into Power BI desktop, and we'll do this in our demo here in a little bit. And then you create that report. You publish that report, where you can view the report. You can actually create, once you publish that report to the service, you can add new visualizations and build dashboards within the service too. It doesn't really give you as granular functionality and tools like the Power BI desktop does, but it gets the job done. And then, the third step would be to share those reports with others. And then the last, once that report is live and is in other hands, they can view and interact with dashboards and reports, either on the web or on the mobile app. Sorry, I was a little repetitive, but I wanted to make sure everybody understood kind of the workflow from the start to the end of kind of how things get to their final destination. So Power BI has 6 major building blocks. These include reports, workbooks, semantic models, data flows, dashboards, and apps. Just to touch on them really, really quick. Reports are used to create and share interactive visuals, while workbooks are used to like organize and analyze your data. Think of, an Excel workbook or something like that. And then semantic models, which if you're a Power BI user or maybe have dabbled a little bit in Power BI, you may know that actually that name, the name has been changed from semantic model or from data sets to semantic models. So semantic models were previously known as data sets, now known as semantic models. They define the relationships between the different data sources. Data flows are used to manage those ETL processes, and then dashboards provide a real-time visual representation of certain key metrics and APIs. A little different from a report. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. And then last, you've got Power BI apps, which are a way to may not know, but they're a way to basically package and distribute Power BI reports and dashboards to a user, ensuring they have the latest updates automatically, so that you're not having to essentially republish a report and reshare that with a user. I want to touch on that a little bit. We won't dive too much into the apps today, but something worth knowing about. Yeah, so I'm going to cover some key components and features, and then I promise we'll get to the demo eventually. So a few key features that pretty much go along with the building blocks that we just talked about, are Power Query, which is your data transformation and cleansing tool. It helps you transform, clean, shape, and prepare your data from multiple data sources and then load it in Power BI. You can actually also use the Power Query editor once you've loaded your data into Power BI to then still transform, clean, shape, your data. Power Pivot is a data modeling tool. It allows users to create relationships between tables, define, calculated columns and measures, kind of getting fancy with things, right? And then analyze data using those DAX formulas that I talked about earlier. Once your data is loaded in Power BI. Power View. So the Power View it's a main component of the Power BI. It gives the users the ability to actually create these interactive visuals. Not going to say visualizations. We're going to call it visuals now, in reports and dashboards. So again, major component, right? That's what actually makes everything look so pretty. Everything else is kind of working behind the scenes, right? But Power View is what gives it the looks. And lastly, Power BI's collaboration with sharing features. This enables, real-time sharing of data, reports, and dashboards, which ultimately, enhances teamwork and communication across the university. There's really no downtime as long as your report is published and your semantic model is set up the way it needs to be set up. Your data should always be real-time, and there should never be really a lack in that. So that's one great benefit of Power BI when it comes to collaboration, amongst our peers. So I wanted to touch a little bit more on the sharing collaboration really quick. So it's more of just like hey, it's really cool to know about these things that you don't just only go into Power BI and share something, right? You don't just go in and share a report you built. So you can simply share those dashboards and reports with colleagues, but did you know that you can also set up data alerts for, maybe something like a KPI that you may want to monitor? So it's pretty cool, huh? You could have you could basically build a dashboard. Let's say you have a few different visuals in that dashboard, and then you have a few KPIs that you really want to keep focus on. A few of those visuals are KPIs, right? You want to keep focus on those. You can set up alerts, and once, like I said, it hits this certain 90%, let's say, threshold, it will then send that user that's been assigned the alert an alert. So yeah, it's a really cool feature that I don't really think a whole lot of developers are even aware about, but right, those can go on for days. And Power BI also focuses on workspaces for team collaboration. This is really important to know too. So by default, Power BI users have a My Workspace, and that's a Microsoft default thing that they have pushed, that you start out with a My Workspace. That's kind of your default blank workspace, and that's where you can use it as essentially, some people use it as the workspace they publish the reports in. Some others may use it as kind of a testing page, and then they have a separate workspace set up for production, for those reports. But you may have not noticed that My Workspace before in Power BI, or you may have never even, you may have never opened the Power BI app before, but you'll see that here in a minute in the demo. But yeah, like I mentioned, users can request additional workspaces, and those actually are funneled through OIT. Not anyone can just create a workspace on their own. So yeah, if anybody ever has the need from a workspace, you feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be glad to set you one up, whether that be for an initiative, a project, or for test use. Yep. So not to bore anybody more, we're going to skip the rest of that and keep on rocking and rolling. All righty. I just wanted to touch a little bit on the various data sources that Power BI allows you to connect to. So it allows us to connect to a wide range of data sources, including Excel, spreadsheets, as well as cloud-based and on-prem data sources like SharePoint, maybe a SharePoint list, or SQL. You can also connect to other things like a URL that may consist of a list, right? So I've actually used I've got it pulled up so I wouldn't forget the name of it. It is FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. They have a failed bank list. That's the list includes banks which have failed since October 1st, 2000. So I can actually enter that URL, and again, when we do our demo, you'll see that area, and I'll mention it again to you guys. But so I can throw that URL in, and Power BI will pull that data automatically for me, which is really, really neat and clean. So Power BI also allows users to connect to APIs and streaming data. Being able to connect to the various data sources in Power BI allows users to easily analyze data from multiple sources, in that one single platform, which is the whole goal. Just wanted to briefly touch, so Power BI offers a wide range of third-party tools like SQL Server Management Studio, Tabular Editor, even connectors for popular services like Salesforce, Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics, etc. And that's where it kind of comes into play of what the goal is for your report, right? I mean, some things like you may be able to use that Google Analytics connector and get what you need. There may be more in-depth data that you want. So then you would, maybe set up some type of SSIS package or some type of flow that went in, and we'll talk Microsoft terms here, right? And let's use the Power Platform. So you could create a flow that dives in, that calls on that API and pulls back that more detailed information for you, and then push that into an Excel sheet, and then you can report off your Excel sheet, right? So there's many different ways to retrieve your data. It's really just what's the most efficient way for the report developer and viewer, of course. Okay, fun stuff, right? But now that we've talked a little bit about Power BI and the building blocks that make it, let's walk through a demo. In the demo, we're going to create create a report in Power BI Desktop. We're going to also publish the report to the Power BI service. We'll then view the report and share it with others. And then if we've got some time, which I think I'm doing good on my time according to my clock, I'm actually going to show you guys how to use the semantic model to create an auto report, which I think you guys will really like. And I've got a few other little, I'm putting my air quotes up, extras that if we have some time today, I'll show you guys, which my main goal of that is to show you, one of those being you can export to PDF. Sounds pretty simple, but sometimes it's easier to give somebody sometimes they don't really want, your goal may not be to give someone interactive visuals. You might want a pretty report, but it's just a static report that, you need to present in like a PDF form. So there's different ways to achieve those goals. So yeah, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Like I said, maybe we can get to those extra cool things. Creating the report from the semantic model, an auto report, is pretty clean and neat. I'm going to stop presenting. All right. So for the demo today, I'm going to use an Excel workbook that I've generated random taxi data into it. I'm not really sure why I use taxi data. I think maybe our fabric engagement, the gentleman, Ron, actually, that's where it came from. He used some taxi data. I don't know why that was fresh in my mind, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to use some taxi data. Let me show you guys that real quick too. Let's see here. Go to my fancy folder called Taxi Demo. And we're going to look at this demo data. So here's our data, right? And pretty neat. I actually what do they refer to as a shameless plug for Copilot. I actually use Copilot to generate all this random data. It generated, I think I have 1,000 records. Maybe I'm off a little bit there. Yeah. We have 1,000 records of data. It's just random data where I wanted to, build some visuals off some of these data points. So a couple things I want you to take note though, the time column, right? So look at the time column. It's just 8:15, AM. You do have the seconds. We have it, the date format, the format for the field is for this column is time. Sorry, tongue twisted there. And so yeah, just I want you to keep an eye on that because you'll see some changes here in a minute. And basically, it uses hours, minutes, and AM, PM. And then so you'll also note right here. So on the first row, that's actually our headers instead of and I haven't really identified those as being the headers in this sheet. This is just a sample spreadsheet. A sample, workbook just created from scratch. So I haven't set any headers or anything like that up in this workbook. So, yeah, but we're going to leave them this way, and we're going to let, Power Query that I mentioned earlier do its magic. All righty. So let's get into Power BI. All righty. So you can create a report in Power BI a few different ways. Here you can click blank report over here, or you can get data from other sources. There's a few different ways that you can really spin up a Power BI report. You could already have data living somewhere and create a report. A few different ways to do it. Today we're going to keep it simple though, right? We're going to click blank report. All righty. So our next steps is we need data, right? You can see here, there's, again, like creating a report, there's multiple ways to get data. I can go up here and get data. I can click here directly into Excel. I can click this fancy button. They all go to the same place though, right? I did want to show you guys a few common data sources that are used, in Power BI. So you got Excel, Power BI semantic models. If you already had a model created, that's what we're creating in this report. SQL, you might have a web, I mentioned earlier, import data from a web page, that URL that I did, et cetera, right? And then if you click more, you'll see the hundreds of other services that Power BI offers to connect data, to get data from. And they grow and evolve every day. So for this one, we're going to be using Excel. Oh, and I will show you guys this was that list that I was talking about that I had pulled from. So I use this URL up top, and I was able to add that in as a data source. And it actually, this just displays whatever these are, these first 10. But you can see there are many, many, many rows. This was right from October 1st, 2000. So yeah, like I said, I'm able to use that URL and use a web as my data source, and it pulls in this data automatically without me having to download the data. And ultimately, right, when this data is updated, it continues to update on my end too, rather than me having that static data that I exported. So super, super neat. Yep. So from here, we've got Excel. We're gonna hit connect, and we're gonna go find our data. We're actually going to use the one that's called demo, so I wouldn't forget which one to use. I've done that on purpose. Cool. So it said, hey, I found your data, but it looks like you got a couple sheets in there. What do you want to do? So actually, this sheet is what I use to generate some of these random pickup and drop-off locations. I had to do that for the formula I used, but great to have in my example, right? So we don't care about that sheet, right? The only data we care about is this first sheet. So, which we've titled September. So I'm going to check that, and you can get a little preview of your data over here. You'll notice that time section, right? So when we want to look at our data, we're like, does everything look good? It looks pretty slick. Our headers look like they populated at the top. It recognized that, but that date column's off now, right? Look, it's got 1899 in it all the way down through, as you can see. And then the rest of the data looks pretty good. So before I load my data, since I know that that time column is not correct, I'm going to actually click transform data. Again, if you were to accidentally load your data and you realize that afterwards, especially once you're building your visual and you get all this junk in there, right? You can go back up top right here to transform data and click that, and it'll allow you to transform this data in the Power Query editor, which was what we're in now. So when I click transform data, you can see the Power Query editor popped up here. See the little name up here. So I'm actually going to go over here to time, and you can see it's using a date time data type. So I'm just going to swap this back to time. Let's see. So let me go over my notes so I can keep up on myself really quick. Here we go. Here we go. Yep. All right. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So change column type. Oh yeah. So since we converted this column, you know, when bringing in the data, the pop-up's asking like, hey, do we want to replace this conversion or add a new step with this conversion? We'll talk about these little steps here in a second, but we want to just replace that conversion. So we're going to click replace. You can see it updates it. Awesome. So we're looking good. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything there. But yeah, so we've updated our time. Oh yeah, only applied steps. That's exactly what I missed. So over here, you can see where Power Query has gone in and applied these specific steps to my data. So you can see where it promoted those headers earlier that we mentioned. You know, all these are just in varchar, you know, format essentially, just ABC 1, 2, 3. And once those headers were promoted, it then updated all of those headers to the correct data types. And you can see where I changed that data type. It shows it here. So if I was to click this X, see that data type, it moves right back to where it used to be. So I essentially, you know, remove that applied step, our data goes back to the original format it was in. So we're going to do a time. Let's see here. For this one. Okay, let's do this really quick. Make sure Justin does everything right. I'm going to delete this. I'm actually going to re-import that. Give y'all another demo. I'm going to do Excel, connect, got our demo. I just noticed something really small and I don't want that to mess up the whole demo. So we're going to go back and fix it. We've got our September sheet. We still see that the time column's off. We're going to transform that data again. All righty, now we're going to go to that time column and change that date time to time like we did before. You can still see, right, we've got our applied steps, nothing, you know, doesn't change. Replace current like we did earlier. Everything else across the board looks pretty good. So now, and I kind of did this quickly earlier, I'm sorry. In the top left corner, you can click close and apply. So it applies all these pending changes. You'll see your data's updated, it updated 1,000 rows, and voila, here we are. So now we're in Power BI Desktop. We've connected to our data, and we can start building reports. So yeah, I do want to break down before we kind of get going in is the Power BI Desktop landscape. So, you know, on the far right, you'll see the filters here. So once we start building, you'll see these filters you can add in, visualizations, and our data pane. You'll see you'll use these panes a whole lot while developing, probably a lot more than the panes on the left, or than the tabs on the left. But I do want to touch on those too. So this first tab is your report view tab, right? It lets you create and arrange your visuals. This tab is actually, the next tab is called table view. And table is essentially where your data is stored, right? So we get a visual of, it it shows us our data, right, that is living in this table, rather than from the Power Query Editor side that gives us a little bit more in depth. This is just the raw data that we're seeing in the report. And then the model is a visual representation, of the relationships and, different measures and whatnot that's being created. So since we don't have multiple data sources here, it's kind of, I can't really show you that, but, let's say we were to have another data set for October and we wanted to, to create a relationship between driver ID, right, to keep that consistent across the board. So we could do something like that where it would have a one-to-one relationship. But yeah, so we're going to go back. Oh, and I should also mention DAX. So yeah, DAX is your last tab over here, and it's a little more in depth, and we're not going to touch on it much today. But it's a formula language like I mentioned earlier in Power BI, and it allows you to create like custom measures and calculations and data analysis for at a more kind of in-depth way. And if maybe it's not something you can create from the UI in Power BI, you can use DAX to do it. Absolutely. Good deal. So enough of that, right? Let's create some visuals. So first, I'm going to create a line chart, and let me back up just a little. So again, right, this is your data on the right side. I kind of just quickly said that. If you had multiple data sources here, you would see all of those data sources here. You can expand to them. You can see, Power BI automatically, as we saw on the Power Query side, set this as a date column, right? So it already shows that date column. Here we've got some measures set up because this is distance, this is fair. So it knows to already, sum this stuff up based off the data types we provided. So again, if you had multiple data sources, you would see all those data sources listed here. Let's say we had a September, October, November. You'd see them listed here, and you can drag and drop from there. To keep things simple and for time's sake, I just wanted to go with 1 month and one data set for today. But yeah, so let's first create, let's do a line chart. So we're going to do a line chart, and our data, and I didn't really familiarize you guys with it because I think I've been staring at it for 3 days, but it basically provides, actually, you know what? Let's do this just in case. Sorry, I should have touched on that. But you've got a ride number. These are single. These are one number to one ride. Unique numbers. Sorry, I cannot think of the word unique there. So these are unique numbers, right? They go all the way down to 1,000. You've got dates in here, which are just random dates, random times, pickup location, drop off location, distance in miles. So how long was the service that from point A to point, from drop off to pick up, or pick up to drop off, and then the fare. And then the cost of it. We got driver ID, customer ID, debit card, or payment method, which we've got debit, credit, or cash, and then the driver rating, which a lot of these ratings were 4.5 through 5. Shout out to these taxi drivers that are not real. So we're going to keep on moving on. All right, cool. So actually, let's just throw this out here. So over here on the left side, on the right side, right under my visualizations pane, I simply just came over here and clicked line chart. When I did that, you can see it populate on the screen, and then it asked me, hey, you want your x-axis, y-axis, secondary y-axis, and so forth, to build this visual. So I'm actually going to go over to our data pane and grab our ride ID, y-axis. I'm going to grab our date and drag it to the x-axis. I'm actually going to take off this quarter because it really bothers me, but that's just a date hierarchy, right? So we want it essentially by month and day, year, month, and day, because we just have September data, right? If we were to just do month, then or year, it would just be a straight line across the board. So we want to keep that day in there, just since we have a month worth of data here. So I'm going to actually drag this over to here so I can center it with the page. All right, cool. So yeah, so this displays the total rides by date, right? It's pretty simple, pretty quick, easy visual. If you highlight over, you can see, in 2020 or in September 19th of 2024, there were 46 rides. September 20th, there were 31, 22nd, 31, and so forth, right? So to expand this a little bit further, though, you may want to include another measure, such as like distance or fare on the secondary y-axis. But for today's example, I'm actually going to leave that secondary one alone, and we're going to jump to the legend. So in the legend, I'm going to add our payment method. So let's say we wanted to break these out by the different payment methods that, that were provided to the taxi service. So here you get a little breakout, right? Looking good. Actually, you know what? I'm doing good on my time. Before I go any further, let's change these payment method line colors. Orange and blue, at least in my world, don't belong in the same visual together. And automatically when it happens, it doesn't work well for me. So
Amen.
We're going to go. Hey, there we go. I like it, Barrett. So, so we're actually going to use our visualizations pane, right? Me saying you guys are going to use a lot of these right side panes. So under the visualizations pane, you can actually click up here. You've got your visuals, right? Here you can click on format your visual. And we will next go to, if I can remember exactly, let me think about this. So this is a grid line. Live demos, right? You gotta remember these kind of things. I know how to do it. It just takes me forever to find it. Lines, select line, pick color. There we go. So you go down to lines, not grid lines. That would make sense, right? These are lines on our report. So I can actually swap this to cash to blue. So let's swap over to cash, and we'll go down to color, and we'll change that to, we're going to do green, right? Cash is king. So we're going to go cash green, and then we're going to change our credit card to, let's roll with a bright red. If that's bright. Cool. And then last but not least, we're going to change the debit card. Let's go with blue because there's no more orange, right? Let's give it a good old bright blue here. Yeah, something like that'll work. Not an auburn blue. Awesome. All right, that looks a little better now. Hey, and we got a little glimpse of the visual of the visualizations pane, under the formatting visuals tab. So actually you can click in general here and do some more formatting amongst the general report rather than just visuals specifically. So, now, so we've got it broken out by cash, card, and credit card. So on 2024 or September 8th of 2024, we've got 4 debit card transactions, 12 credit card, and 13 cash transactions. And so here there were 20 debit cards, so it kicked butt that day. But to even, visualize this data even more in depth, I'm going to actually drag over our driver ID into the small multiples field. And so this actually gives you an overview of each driver. There's only 4 drivers in this data set. And how they, or what type of payment method was used, and the count of rides that they, you can kind of see a trend basically from those count of rides and whatnot. Basically, lets you see how the trends, relate to each driver. So let's say that, just to show you how quick and easy this is, right? That we threw that together in a few clicks, right? Yeah, but so let's say we want to use the same visual, but we want to also display, like pickup location trends on this report too. So I just copied that and I just Control-C, Control-V, go right click, paste the visual. I'm the keyboard shortcut person. And so actually here, I'm going to go in, and so all I have to do is copy it and then remove. Yeah, like I said, remove, so over here, we've got payment method, right? And we said we don't really care about payment method for this report. We care about the pickup location. So this gives a trend of this displays a trend of the pickup locations, right? Through that month of September. So driver 2 in September 19th of 2024 had 6 suburban and 2 uptown pickups. No downtown that day. Oh man, we got some orange and blue going on here too, right? Well, for time's sake, we're gonna keep rocking and rolling. We're gonna ignore the orange and blue though, right? Everybody ignore it. All right. You made me do it. Very good. Sorry. Lines, downtown, blue. We just need to take out some orange, you know. That's my thing. What are we? Uptown. Color. Let's go with something. Here we go. And just for practice purposes, let's just make this something different. All right, cool. So beautiful visuals, right? And simple and easy, right? All I did was after I built that out, copied and pasted, changed my legend to pickup location, and voila. There's that gave us that delivered that visual to us in less than 10 seconds. So I'm also going to add a pie chart to this report really quickly to display the total fair price group by payment method. So if I go here and I throw in a pie chart, and you guys will see why I'm doing this in a minute. Hopefully. So we've got our pie chart here, and let's see. So for our legend, we are going to, so what I want to, let's see, we want to display the total fair price group by payment method. So for the legend, we're going to be payment method because that is, how we want to group them. And then, so for the values, it'll just be the fair. So it'll be the sum of those. So pretty cool, right? I was able to quickly throw together, credit card transactions for the month of September were a total of $10,000, which took up 35% of those transactions. Debit cards took up 32%, 9,000, roughly 9,000, and cash is 9,500, took up 31%. So, I mean, just like that, with a few clicks and drags on my mouse, I've created, 3 interactive visuals that identify trends and allow you to easily, tell a story with your data. As I showed you, with the data points that you can highlight, but I think the really cool thing, would be being able to do something like this. So all of these visuals right now, they interact with each other, right? So if I click on this visual and I go up here, you can see these interactions right now. If I do edit interactions, there is an interaction, but if I was to click none here, it would no longer interact with my visuals. But I want to keep everything interacting as planned. If it will let me, let's see. We'll get there, right? Okay, well, we'll see what happens. If it doesn't interact, no, it will. Let's see. Let's do this actually, since it's so simple and easy. Like I told you guys, I'm going to Control C that visual to the right. So what I did was I was editing those interactions to show you guys, but for some reason, won't let me change this one back. So for time's sake, and to again prove my theory of how easy this is, right? So we're using payment method in that one to the right. Oops. We're going to actually Control C. I'm going to go over here and delete this one. Control V, drag it over. We're going to change this back to payment method, our legend. Perfect. Okay. So back to where we were, right? Yeah. So it's really neat because I think one of the coolest things is, right, so let's say you wanted to come in and actually going back to those, sorry, that really threw me off, but going back to those visuals that are interactive, you can come in and click on your, let's say we've still got the orange and blue, man, right? Like, we're already here. We might as well just fix this up. So cash was lime green. Credit card's red. Hey, we're keeping everything consistent, right? Debit card's here. All right. So, if I wanted to see all of my cash transactions, I could click within this visual, and then it filters out just my cash transactions for each driver for the specific areas here. So again, I'm going to click back into it to show you guys, right? So right now we've got downtown. Let's just use this one for an example. 2024 September 11th. We have 6 downtown, 1 in the suburbs, and 4 uptown. What date was that? September 11th, 2024. So we go find September 11th, and we just see 4 downtown transactions because there were only 4 downtown transactions that, for the transactions that day, there were only 4 cash transactions and they were all performed downtown, right? So if I click out of this and everything's back to normal, so I can actually, click across multiple visuals. So let's say that I wanted to do something like, oops, sorry, let's click out of here. So let's say I wanted to do something like credit transactions. So I'm holding control down. I should have mentioned that. So I'm going to click on credit again. It's going to take everything back to normal. So if I hold control down and I click credit transaction or credit, and then next I go over here and I click, let's say downtown. Check that out, right? So these are just the credit transactions that were on. These were just the credit transactions where the pickup location was downtown. So if I click downtown again and take that off, you'll see over here it's just we just basically threw together a quick visual. There's ways to hide these other ones if you click on one and whatnot, right? This is all just default with Microsoft. We'd probably take these little data points off and things like that just for the appearance of our visual if we were trying to cram all this into one page. But yeah, you can see, if I come back and click up here, it still gives me, so we're going to click out, right? So here I'm credit card. That changed everything, right? So I've still got credit card transactions. We've got 2 cash and 7 credit cards for driver 1 on September 16th. But then if we go to downtown, driver 1 September 16th, we just have 2 and 4 rather than 2 and 7, right? Because those were not downtown. So, and last but not least, in our little pie chart, you can come down here and we're looking at credit card transactions, right? So you can actually highlight this and see highlighted is there were $3,060 worth of credit card transactions for downtown, right? So basically what we have highlighted in our visuals is what is displaying here. So I think it's really neat that not only will it filter out that data based off of your legend here that you click, but also in your pie chart, it gives you a sum of just what you've selected up top. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. And as I mentioned, of course, there are many different formatting options and whatnot that will make these visuals more appealing. But we're just keeping what we have today for time's sake. And I see that there's 5 minutes left on this, so we're gonna roll through this, and if we have time to do some fancy stuff, we will. All right. So now, so let's say that we like the report and we're ready to publish it, right? So I'm going to go up top and I'm going to hit publish. I haven't saved my report, so it's going to ask me to save it first. I'm going to really quickly hit more options. I like throwing this in a certain area. Here we go, right? So I'm going to call this September Taxi Report. So it saved it. So I'm actually going to click publish again. We won't dive into it. And then I'm going to click my workspace. So within my workspace, so what I mentioned earlier, these are the other workspaces that I have that my PJ Realm 1 at ua.edu has access to. But again, I'm using my workspace. I'm going to click select. Tells you that it's publishing it. Usually takes no time. Boom. So there we go. Got it. So now, if I minimize Power BI Desktop or close out, whatever you prefer, open this back up, and we're going to actually get off of our FDIC data. Now we no longer need it. So I'm in your workspaces, you'll see your My Workspace on this left side. I'm going to refresh this page. So if we scroll down, we will see our September taxi report, right? So you see you've got a report here and a semantic model, right? So the report are the visuals, dashboards, et cetera, the visualizations. And the semantic model is what keeps everything running in the back end, right? It keeps, like I touched on earlier, it defines your relationships. It keeps your credentials and your connectivity for the data to the report. It kind of works as the backbone of your report. But if I was to click my report, it'll look just like it did a minute ago. Really neat, right? We can even, again, hold control. Let's do cash this time. We're going to do cash in Uptown. And right here, we can see, easily can see that there was a, just for Uptown Cash, $3,082.92, which makes up 10% of our transactions. But yeah, it was just, that was a quick and super easy way to show, some insights within, like, I don't even know, I lost track of my time, but we probably took 5, 10, 15 minutes, and 10 of those minutes were me talking about things that, explaining things. So really you could have done this in 5 minutes, really thrown this together and told a story, with your data. So now that we've opened the report, so like now that you publish it to your workspace, let's say you want to share it with somebody. Okay. So I can go up here, and right now by default it's people and organization, but I'm actually going to check specific people. And then I have the option to say, hey, do I want to allow recipients to share this report or not? I may not want them to, I may just want them to view it. I may be really proud of my report, and I'm planning on sending it. The next person I'm sending it to is planning on sending that out to the department, right? So I'm going to leave that as is. Specific people. I'm actually going to use my admin account for test purposes. So I'm going to click that. And we're live demo, so hopefully everything goes good, right, guys? So far, so good. And then I'm going to share it. Bada boom. So over here, I'm actually going to give it a minute. So you can see I received an email. Justin Brown, which is, kind of has shared this report with you. So then I can easily click on open this report. This is actually opening it. Let's see. Yep. Copy link. Boom, boom, boom. So I click open report. I'm in again, this is my other account. I'm not in this is my admin account that I'm in. So I'm just a a report viewer at this point. I can easily go in and see that data, which is outstanding. So then we covered, we covered sharing the report, and I've opened the report. You can see that I can still interact with those visuals. I'm going to do a credit in the suburbs, and looks like we have 3,401. So yeah, that man, I nailed it right on the head too. It's 4 o'clock on the dot. That essentially sums up what I wanted to cover today, guys. There were a couple little extra things that, if you want to hang on, I don't mind showing you guys. I'd love to. It's just some small little tricks and tips that I think would be really helpful as you begin or continue your Power BI journey. But I will, like I said, touch on those, but they're pretty quick and simple. So, but again, feel free. I know time's run up, so feel free to jump off the call now if you need to. And if you don't hang around, I really appreciated your time today, and I appreciate you being here. So really, really quick. Like I said, this won't even take me long at all. So we're going to go back. So over here, right, so I can see my workspaces, right, that I mentioned earlier that you could saw when I published. But under this, you can see, under this little line, the different semantic models and reports I have open. So I'm going to actually keep this report open, and I'm going to go back to my workspace. And I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to go to the semantic model. You can see that it opened the semantic model here. So I want to swap back the report really quickly. I can, or I can swap back the semantic model. Pretty cool stuff. But one really, really cool thing is you could actually, in here, now that this data has been built into a semantic model, you can actually go up top and click explore this data, and you can auto create a report, right? So just based off my general row, 1,000 rows and 8 columns of data, Power BI just viewed my data and then put me together, a quick and easy report, which may not be, of course, your final, production report, but it at least gives you like a good starting point and a good ground to begin with. And I really like how it includes some narratives in there. You can actually do that on the Power BI side. I didn't really show you guys that, but there's a visual here that just says that's Q&A, but this is narrative. And it will, I can't think of the exact word right now, but it will, read your report and provide insights based off your data back to you. So this was super cool, right? Just threw this together. with no effort at all. Like I said, it's a good like at least a foundation, a good starting point to kind of get you where you're going. And then you could even, save a copy of this report as a PBIX file, take that out to Power BI desktop and do more with that from there. And another little cool thing I wanted to show you. So we'll use this one for example, just for time's sake. Nope, we won't. We'll actually use a report that's active. We're not going to save that. So here we go. So up top, I mentioned earlier about, saving the report to, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. I mentioned earlier about saving the report to PDF. So yeah, you can easily just go up top in the PBI service and do export. And why is it not doing it for me? Let's go back to my report. Here we go. Oh, it may have been right there, and you guys are like, why does he not see that? But it's right in front of my face. I did not see that option. So yeah, I can click export to PDF, leave it with current values, and you export it. So you may, we all the time run into those situations where we may have a individual that may not be as tech savvy and may not necessarily want to be as tech savvy, right? They're just like, hey, I don't want to see the data. You do all the fun, pretty stuff, make it look good, but just give me a copy of it. And I actually want it on a piece of paper or emailed to me or whatever, right? So yeah, you can easily just convert that into a PDF and send that data over. Or let's say, your KPIs reached a certain point and you wanted to send that out to people, but you didn't really want people to have access to the report specifically. You just wanted them to see a snapshot of kind of what's going on. That gives you an easy way to do that. And the other two things is super simple, like the narrative that I mentioned, which was pretty easy and cool. I just click narrative there, and it actually just generates it for me. I mean, it's basically like I mentioned earlier about low code, no code. This is no code. Let's see here. I could get it deleted. This would be great, right? You get it though, right? We saw another report. What was that other report at? Let's see. That was our I can actually do this. So this failed banks report, I mentioned that earlier, right? So there's some different visuals, that I've created, but within here, I can actually, say failed banks. Here's my semantic model. This semantic model was used in 11. Well, it was actually, I tried to refresh it today, but it was over a year ago. I don't want to waste anyone's time, but essentially it's the same thing, right? You can export the data, auto create a report. I mean, this is just off, again, old data that I've had sitting out there from, and that was the failed banks that I showed you guys that's pulling from that URL, right? So it looks like we had a peak in 2010. Again, this sample data, right? I don't know how accurate it is, but super cool that it was able just to identify that data and then drop this narrative, down the bottom. And I believe that's it. Barrett, I actually forgot to, if I could stop sharing, I could maybe figure this out. Let's see. There we go. And not that any of you guys would ever, run into this, but if we do, I want to cover it. So before we conclude, I just wanted to mention some data privacy in Power BI, and I should have thrown this in at the beginning so I could have all the time in the world to do my demo, but you live and learn, right? But yeah, some just so you're aware, right? As a data steward, some visuals in Power BI and a report developer allow report users to see underlying data behind visuals. There's a few different, features where you can right click on certain visuals and click on show data point as a table. And it actually, like I said, shows that underlying data behind the scenes, which, can be useful for an analysis purposes, but it also, poses a high risk of exposing sensitive information like PII data, HIPAA, FERPA data, et cetera. So to mitigate this risk, OIT, we strongly encourage Power BI developers, to use these best practices with data sets. So just to de-identify your data from the get-go, right? Remove it. If it's personal data, you don't need it, just remove it. If you need it for reporting purposes, obviously you're not displaying that data, but if you're having to do it for like unique, CWID, something like that, then make it non-identifiable. You can always hash that data and make it non-identifiable where someone cannot, identify that data that's de-identifiable. Create views. So views to filter, right? We all pretty familiar with views. If not, views just allow you to filter and present only necessary data. In Power Query Editor, you saw it, right? We brought it in. If a couple of those columns I didn't need, I could have completely deleted them before bringing them into my Power BI model or semantic model. And then the hide option, the fields pane. This is kind of the last and least, but in the fields pane in Power BI desktop on the right side, you are able to select a hide option. And if you're not using that data point in your visual, it will hide it from that kind of underlying data right-click deal. So yeah, something super important that we as OIT has been trying to stress to all faculty and staff. So I wanted to touch on that. And last but not least, I do want to mention all you UA faculty and staff. I should have maybe mentioned this at the beginning, but you guys are equipped with an A5 license, which includes Power BI Pro. So, you're ready to rock and roll. You want to start today? You want to start this afternoon? Have at it. And I will mention there are Power BI Premium connectors, which in most cases, I don't think you'll need. There may be certain scenarios where you might find the use of one, and there's usually workarounds we can implement right around those. But if so, then there is a Power BI Premium per user license that needs to be purchased if you're a heavy user of those premium connectors. I think it's roughly, don't keep my word on this, I know Barrett's recording, but I think it's roughly, premium. It's roughly, let's say, around $50 a year because you already have that A5 license and whatnot. So if you already have an account set up and it's just that premium license, I think our education or premium per user license, I believe our education prices are around or a significant discount. So it should be around $50. But in most cases, like I said, these licenses aren't needed. And then I'm actually going to throw some of these resources that I've mentioned up here in the chat. And I'm going to leave the floor open for any questions 10 minutes after we ran over. Hey, Barrett gave you a warning there, right? And I just wanted to end it by saying I really do appreciate everyone's time today and hanging in there with me, and hope everyone, got a good understanding of Power BI. And if you ever, if you have any questions in the future, I am, as I mentioned at the beginning, the Power BI main contact. So feel free to reach out if you ever have any questions. Thank you all.